Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host. And today I have guest Annette Tidball. Nice to have you as a guest, Annette. Before we get into talking about your book, I just want to find out a little bit about yourself. So can you just sort of tell me your background and maybe what you're up to these days?
For sure. So I'm a mom of 6, a grandma of almost 5, one on the way. I love to learn and I'm keeping myself busy. I'm learning adult gymnastics. I'm overcoming my fear of swimming, and I work as a yoga instructor, and not only that, I'm going back to school to become a registered massage therapist.
Wow.
So
You are busy. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and be our guest today. So the reason we're here, we want to talk about your book. So it's called Fly Again. It's about your late husband, Brian. So
Yes.
can you just tell us a little bit about what took place in that situation?
yeah, so Brian was working here in British Columbia, and he was a pilot, had just taken a job as putting out forest fires.
Mm-hmm.
And his plane went down and he passed away.
My condolences, a tragic situation. So your book talks about how you cope with that, how you actually went through that trauma and that tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering what inspired you to do that? Why did you feel the need to sit down and write that?
There was a persistent prompting that is nagging, tapping at my shoulder, telling me that I needed to remember what I was going through, and then years later reminding me that I needed to write a book. It wasn't on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing your personal life with the world is
Mm-hmm.
throwing all your vulnerability out there. But after some reluctance, I thought, okay, I can do this because there's a greater purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
So you sat down, and how long did it take you to write it?
Honestly, it was months.
Okay.
I would sit down and the words would just come.
Mm-hmm.
They would flow, I would write, dinner time would come, and there would be no more words that would come in my mind. It was like all the influence, all the inspiration just shut off, and then the next day I would just go.
Mm-hmm.
And all the words came. I remember taking a moment to vent. There's some things in there that I brush over lightly, but I went and I vented, and then I felt this prompting that said, okay, now that you've got that off your chest, let's erase that and put in what should be the focus. So
just give us an idea. What's the timeline we're talking about here?
months, just
Okay.
months. Yeah.
And when did your husband pass away?
So he died July 31st, 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you published the book?
2019.
Okay. So it allowed you to reflect on that situation. Was it, I get the sense, looking at your book, that it's somewhat an opportunity for you to really get your feelings out and to talk about how it made you feel and how you cope with that situation.
Definitely.
Therapeutic is the word I was looking for.
Definitely. A lot of people think I wrote the book as my own therapeutic process,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't entirely true. I was already going through processes of dealing and coping.
Right.
Really, it felt like I was doing it for someone else, writing it for maybe one reader,
Right.
and I didn't know who that was.
And I think you achieved that, because when I read the book, I sort of got the impression that it was not only designed for yourself, you telling that story,
Yeah.
but you could really relate to people that maybe have gone through other tragic losses, and they could maybe learn from that, or they could find comfort in some of the shared experience. Was that sort of
Yes.
something that came through with yourself as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. We don't have to go through the same trials to have the same feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like people can really connect with my story.
Mm-hmm. So how did you go about crafting the book? I noticed there's sort of almost like a self-help section
Yes.
after each chapter. How did that all come about? How did you sort of physically plan the book out?
Okay, so honestly, everyone asks me this question. It honestly just flowed from heaven or something. It just flowed. I remember feeling inspired to do a different self-help at the end, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. was a little more complex. And so putting down self-reflection questions and then self-help tips, the things that helped me process the grief.
Right.
Yeah.
So talking about grief, I mean, it's a very broad subject, and
Yes.
everyone handles it differently. What motivated you to want to write about it?
I told my girls when Brian died that everyone has different trials, but everyone will experience death. Either they will pass or their loved ones will pass away. And so it's something that will resonate with everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
I know your faith came through strong in the book as well, so
Yeah.
you obviously drew from that. What other support, what other systems were in place to help you go through that situation?
Oh gosh, I've done so many things. So prayer and journaling, scripture study. Journaling was very therapeutic, which is why when people say, when you wrote the book, was it therapeutic? Well, when I wrote the book, I went to my journal,
Right.
which is what was therapeutic. And of course, therapy. I didn't turn to substances. I think the hardest thing about grief is feeling it.
Right.
And we don't want to feel it. And people will stuff it down.
Right.
But talking about it, sharing how I felt with my children. I remember being in the grocery store and shopping for the first time where I could actually function and get out of the house. And I stopped at the men's deodorant and I just started to cry in the grocery store. And a wonderful neighbor came by, saw me and said, "Oh dear, 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 don't cry here." And I said, "Of course I can cry here. I'm sad." And so I think it took her back,
Right.
but it's, you know, it's okay to feel.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sort of illustrates the point that everyone does grieve differently in different circumstances, and,
Yeah.
and depending on what is happening in that particular moment.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
so when you sat down and wrote the book and put together your thoughts and so forth, did you have someone go through it, or did you? What was the process as you got to the point where this is finished?
This is it. This is finished. So I remember writing on my last day, which I didn't realize would be the last day. And as the words were coming, and sometimes it would even be word for word, the, new, and thinking, you know, of your consciousness and your subconsciousness. And I was thinking, I wonder when I'm going to end, because the story continues. And then as I was wrapping up, I felt, this is it. You don't need to add any more. And then, of course, it goes through editing, and my poor family had to read it over and over and over and over. They're probably very sick of, I'm sure that was therapeutic for them to read the book several times.
Right.
Yes.
Well, the product that you ended up with is very readable and very inspiring in many ways. So congratulations on that. I was just wondering, when you stop and look at a project like this, did you have an audience in mind? Like, who do you think would want to read the book?
I felt like I was honoring Brian. He was a very quiet, humble man, never drawing attention to himself. And as I wrote it, I really felt that it was important to let his memory and the wonderful man, the character who he was as a father and a husband, was important to record that. And so when I finished writing, it was for that one person who read it. But as I wrote it, it was really to honor him, because it's quite heroic when you put your life on the line to save other people.
Right. You know, that comes through very nicely in the book. I thought you did a really nice job of, I'm sad that I didn't get a chance to meet him. He sounded like a really
wonderful,
interesting person, and lived a pretty interesting and dynamic life as well.
Yes.
So when I looked at the book and went through it and had a chance to read it, I noticed at the end of each chapter you sort of have a self-reflection or some tips as to how people might cope with various circumstances and so forth. So I just wanted to really ask you specifically about one chapter here.
Yes.
Because I'm just thinking, if someone that's going through grief, how do they cope with that situation? And I just thought some of your approaches and were really excellent.
Thank you.
So here's the tip, and I'm just going to ask you about the tip and then maybe have you talk about it if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So there's 6 of them here. The first one being, the pain is real and it will pass. What did you mean by that?
When things, okay, let me give you an example that's not in the book, that happens later in my life when we moved here. I went out to my car and it was covered in ash because here we get the fires. And as I went to the car, my immediate post-traumatic self went into shock and thought, that's a dead body, that's a dead body. And I went into panic and the pain came right back. But then I got in the car and I sat there and I said to myself, I'm okay, Brian's okay, he's not hurting. And I just kept repeating. And it's true, you feel the pain, but grief is not linear, it comes in waves. So you know, okay, I'm feeling pain now, but it's gonna subside. And then the next wave will come and I'll be better, I'll be able to cope a little better. And just embrace it instead of trying to fight it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting tip. Thank you. Okay. Number 2 was, people will say dumb things.
Absolutely, they say dumb things.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say, but for me, and everybody has something that bothers them, so you can never be perfect for everybody.
Yeah.
But they would say things like, don't cry here, or time will make things all right. Well, sometimes it doesn't feel that way, and you don't want to hear that.
That's pretty empty sometimes. Right?
Yes, but coming from a place of self-reflection and saying, okay, they don't understand. They haven't experienced loss in the same capacity, or maybe not at all, and so I can have some grace for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Point number 3 that you mentioned is cry.
Yes, cry. So
Here we are laughing at crying.
I know, but cry to get it out.
Right.
Here's an analogy. A rabbit gets scared. It runs off and it needs to shake. If it doesn't shake it off, it's going to die. So cry it out instead of holding it in your body, and just let it out. I found crying in the shower to be the best. No one can bother you there, or then they can't see you crying there.
So you say, let the pain and the stress escape. So, yeah. Okay, point number 4 is talk about them. So I would think that someone that has lost a tragic, or a mate or a spouse or a friend even tragically, would have difficulty doing that. So why the suggestion or the tip of talking about them?
Again, I feel the more you talk, the more you can get it out of your system. Some people don't have great relationships when that person passes, and the talking may be different. But with Brian, he was so wonderful that I want my girls to know that part of them, that their daddy is still actually alive, if you will, in our family. Yeah, we talk about him all the time.
Right. So I like this sentence where it says, talking about Brian keeps him close to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also talking heals wounds. So, you know, I can see the benefits of that. Okay, let's go on to point number 5 here under the same topic. It says mini thoughts. What do you mean by mini thoughts?
Oh, so back to my car analogy, which is not in the book, obviously, but you get, at least I do, I assume everybody gets the same, where you have a moment where you can think something or change your thought. And I feel like the more aware we become, the more we're able to keep agency, freedom of that power in our brain. So instead of thinking something terrible, which I did when I went to the car, I went back and I said, no, wait, let's be logical. I am okay. Yes, there's ash on my car, but I am actually okay. And switching in that moment so that you can be your better self.
Okay. Really take care of you. So just maybe expand on that. What are you meaning there?
Every person's journey will be different, obviously. Taking care of yourself is important. How can you take care of others? So I had 4 little girls that needed their mom, And yes, there were times when I shut down and it was difficult. But for me, I found, like I said, journaling and yoga and therapy, crying in the shower, talking about him, reading self-help books, I read a lot of books about near-death experiences. I just really wanted to know, where is he? What's happened now? Why do I feel him so close? And it's important to connect with yourself so you can be a better person. And if I could add on to that, people have asked me, are you angry with, because Brian was not in the left seat, he was in the right seat. Are you mad at the pilot? Well, that doesn't bring Brian back. Being angry does nothing helpful, just deteriorates the soul. And so finding joy, and like my book says, I want you to live. I really feel like Brian wants me and my girls to live a full, rich life. So finding that happiness and joy despite what's happened is really taking care of myself.
So just looking after that reality of the moment and moving forward. So that's exactly how you sum this up. It says, move forward, you're always stronger than you give yourself credit for.
Absolutely. Yes.
So obviously you found strength in that.
Daily strength. I find daily strength,
So what has been the reaction to your book? It's been out for a bit. Have you had that kind of feedback from people that they've appreciated you telling your experience?
Yes, it's very interesting because there's many different levels within my book. So people may connect more of a superficial level, like for one friend, she was learning how to read English and it was her first book that she was able to tackle. For another friend, learning about how good a relationship can be really helped her. But the connection with losing somebody, many people, I've only heard positive things about my book, and I felt inspired in moments to give it to a stranger here, or walk down the street because their son passed away and I didn't know, and then finding out later how beneficial and how much they needed to read this book.
You know, and again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is that people deal with their grief in different ways. You know, some people totally isolate themselves, have nothing to do with any other people, or you know, they almost become within a shell. And obviously, you've taken a different approach in that you've been able to talk about it. You were able to sort of communicate your feelings, and in doing so, do you feel that you've really helped others?
Absolutely. In fact, I feel like when people learn about my past, learn about my book, learn about Brian, they're quite surprised because I come from a place of joy right now. And I'm not going to lie, I'm super excited to one day see him again, right? So that makes things more bearable. And I know not everybody has that same belief system.
So let's talk also just, I always like to talk about the physical production of the book. So I notice on the front of the book it says it's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So this was a self-published book.
Yes.
And how did that process go?
Oh, I don't know if I would go that same route again.
It had some challenges?
It had some challenges. It really did, yes. Next time I write, I think I will look in a different direction.
I've heard that from other authors. Sometimes it looks so easy, but no matter how you do it, it's always a challenge, and there's always many things that you wonder about and say, could I have done something different? Or whatever. But you know what? I tip my hat to the fact that you took the initiative to put it down and get it out there for the benefit of others and for yourself. I just want to talk a little bit about your current family and how do they react to the book?
Oh, well, my youngest was 3 I've remarried, and so to distinguish, Brian is daddy and Kevin is dad. So when daddy died, it was really, some of my kids took it harder than others at the beginning, and some are blocking it, and now others are just starting to go through their grieving process. But we still talk about him, and my husband now, Kevin, Brian is part of who we are. And kudos, not that this is about Kevin, but he's really embraced and supported this dynamic.
Right.
And what in Kevin's words, he said, Brian never stopped loving you or the girls.
Right.
So
when I did some research on your book and so forth, on yourself, I noticed you've done a number of media interviews and so forth. Obviously, you're comfortable talking about this. Where does that come from? What prompts you to want to get out and not only talk about your book, but also talk about the experience?
I found that since Brian's passing, those who are grieving seem to find me, or I find them, and we connect. And just listening to their story and being able to be compassionate, to understand, giving them a voice. So when people talk to me or read my book, and then I actually ask them, what resonated with you? It doesn't have to be something particularly written, but what did you experience? What did it bring up for you? And then we have this beautiful conversation. I really like people to understand, because not everybody has this experience, that for me there is a life after death. Not everybody feels it, but sometimes they're like, was my mom just here? I just felt a hand on my shoulder. Those little inklings, well, don't deny those feelings. Tap into it. Trust, as I say, trust the goosebumps that come, because you're getting a message. Like, for me, if I, knowing that there's somebody who's deceased who might be close to me, but not acknowledging them, I feel so bad. But just, embracing that. But yes, everybody should have a voice in their grieving.
So it's an opportunity for you to really provide support for those that have sort of gone through similar circumstances.
Absolutely.
Or maybe some trauma in their life.
Yeah.
So do you actively reach out to others? Like, are you part of any therapy group, or?
I'm not.
No,
we just seem to find each other.
Right.
And wherever, and you see I'm busy, so I communicate with people all the time, all the time. And my kids used to say, Mom, why do you got to talk to everybody? But that's how we get to know one another.
Right.
And then they just seem to tell me. They just talk to me.
So how did you go out and market your book? Have you got it into bookstores and that kind of thing?
So currently in this area, Kootenay Grounds is carrying my book, and obviously Amazon. And then I have another bookstore in Alberta that's carrying my book.
Right.
I don't have a publicist, so it's really by word of mouth. And even though I love talking to people about my book, I don't like talking about the business aspect of the book. So I'm a little timid on that aspect.
So it's a real grassroots kind of enterprise.
Yes. Although people have purchased it on Amazon in different countries, and it's made its way around the world. So,
Good. So you listed a long list of things that you're busy with.
Yes.
And yet you referred to the fact that you might write in the future again. So tell me about what you sort of have in mind.
I think it would be interesting to write about Kevin's side of the story and delve in a little deeper about what it's like to marry, a stranger and go that route.
And what does Kevin think about that?
I've already been asking him questions, interviewing him. We'll see when it's finished what he thinks about that when he proofreads it. Yes.
So are you currently actively working on the project, or is it just sort of, are you formulating it? Formulating.
It's, yes. What do I add? What don't I add? Because with this one, I don't feel the gates of heaven opening. It's more of an actual challenge to get it sorted out,
So going back to that, you're busy, you've got a long list of things that you're doing, so forth. How do you find time to write? Like,
therapeutically, I'll probably go with the second book, go back to the journal, because for me, writing is a wonderful way of expressing how I'm feeling. Sometimes I write the little short stories, and then when it comes time to finding, which was really great about this book, finding, what date did that happen? You go back to your journal. It happened 2 weeks after this event? What? And so journaling has been really great at processing.
So tell me about journaling. I haven't had an opportunity to explore that a lot. So how do you go about crafting your journal?
Usually a strong emotion has triggered something within me, or a quiet reflection. And then I have my little book by my side of the bed and pull it out, date it, and just whatever I feel like writing in that moment. How I'm feeling, why I feel this way, what event happened. Yes.
So every day or?
No, because honestly, if my kids were to read drudgery every day, the weather was like that, I don't think it would be a captivating audience. So when something happens, or when I feel like, oh, that was a really great moment, or that was a really terrible moment, I'm going to write it down and record it. Yeah.
And that gives you something to refer back to?
Absolutely, yes.
Sort of a baseline that you can follow? So.
Yes, yeah.
Good. Okay, so we've talked about your book and maybe some of your future plans and so forth. And is there anything that we've sort of missed that you would like to mention about the book? Or?
I don't want to give away the ending, but can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you find that it brought anything to the surface for you? Anything that triggered, or had you have a wonderful memory?
Yeah. You know, the thing that I really appreciated about your book is I've, over the years, dealt with many people that have had, you know, tragic situations or grief. And everyone, as you mentioned, copes with it differently. And yet I thought many of your suggestions were very practical, very suggestions that could be applied in just about any circumstance. So even though it's in the context of grieving, I found that your tips on just sort of living were quite effective as well. So I would say job well done there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So so we look forward to your future writing as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Annette. We really appreciate you being a guest today. And this has been Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell.